Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Benji-Sales live chat. It's so good to be back. It's so good to see everybody. How are you doing today? I hope you are all great. I am still alive. I'm sorry about no streams for the last couple weeks. I don't need to go into it. You guys all know why. I appreciate everyone that has been reaching out, telling me that they missed the show. I apologize to all of you for several weeks again without a chat. Hopefully we can start getting some consistency back here again. You know, I miss the consistency and I miss doing the show. So apologies, but it's good to be back. It's good to see you all. We've got a lot of topics we can talk about today. Now, what are we going to discuss? What are the big news? What are the big topics, the big headlines? Well, there's been tons, right? Because I've been gone for several weeks. But definitely a few that I'm sure we're going to focus on. One of them is going to be that Starfield, according to Bethesda, is their biggest launch ever. Now, that's going to be in terms of players, clearly. That's not going to be in terms of sales, or at least we don't have any evidence that it would be their biggest launch ever in terms of sales. But in terms of players, it is their biggest launch in the history of Bethesda, with over 10 million players in less than a month. I think the exact number, I can't recall off the top of my head. I want to say it was like 20 days or something like that. But they haven't even hit a full month yet, and they're already over 10 million players. It's their biggest launch ever in terms of player count. That's going to be a topic we can talk about. There's a lot of debate. Is that successful? Is that not successful? Should the player count be much higher, considering Game Pass? I'm sure people all have thoughts about that, so we can talk about Starfield, Bethesda, the impact for Xbox, all of that sort of stuff if you guys would like. One that I'm sure is going to have a ton of questions and comments on is going to be these massive Xbox leaks that came out by accident with the FTC court case that's going on. And at first, a lot of us thought that it was something that the FTC must have messed up, right? Because this happened in like the middle of the night in terms of like people discovering it, at least in the middle of the night here in the US. You know, it's going to vary by time zone. But I remember late at night, all of a sudden seeing all this stuff pop up and being like, what? Wait, what leaked? Wait, how did this leak? Court documents? And there was a lot of confusion at first, like what was happening? Like, how did all of this get out? It was like tons and tons of just unredacted stuff that was never supposed to be made public. Emails, private emails from Phil Spencer, plans for next-gen consoles, plans for mid-gen refreshes, estimated prices of getting things on Game Pass. I mean, it was just an unbelievable amount of leaks. In some ways, it's the biggest gaming leak I've ever seen in the industry. Depends how you want to look at it, right? In terms of just like the most amount of leaks in terms of just like games, like game announcements that weren't revealed before, that's actually probably still the Nvidia leak. That was probably still the biggest leak in regards to that. But in regards to like behind the scenes of a company, you know, what their plans are, private emails, like what the thoughts of the CEOs and the leadership of a gaming company is. I think this is the biggest leak ever, actually, in terms of gaming for that perspective, right? So pretty crazy. Turns out it was actually Microsoft's fault. They are the ones who messed up. Oh, wait, is my mic messed up? It's showing red. Hey, guys, can you tell me how my mic is? It's showing red on OBS, but now it's showing yellow. Can I just make sure I'm not blowing your guys' eardrums out? Can you let me know in chat that everything sounds good? Okay, Kellegram says it's good. So it might just be OBS. OBS was trying to tell me it was like blowing people's eardrums out. Okay, everyone says it's fine. So, yeah, pretty crazy. Turns out it was actually Microsoft's fault. Microsoft are the ones who accidentally uploaded this. And so really, I mean, it sucks for Microsoft, but it's all on them. It was their own fault. So someone's going to be in a lot of trouble for that. So I'm sure there's going to be tons of questions about that, about their next-gen plans, their mid-gen refresh. Looks like the complete lack of a pro console, which pretty much backs up what Phil's been saying, is that they won't do a pro. These leaked plans. Now, some of this stuff is old, to be very clear, so some of this stuff could change. Phil Spencer even made a tweet about it, saying that some of this info is old and outdated and things have changed. So I'm sure some stuff's going to stay the same. Some stuff's going to change. But we can talk about that if you guys want to. We can talk about it looks like things are passing in the UK over the Activision deal, and really anything that you guys want to discuss. If this is your first time ever as part of my live chat, which I don't think there will be many of those today, because, you know, since I'm so out of out of consistency. I'm sure it's just going to be, the hardcores here. But in the slim chance you're someone new here, basically the way this works, it's an interactive show. It's a stream. It's 100% driven by you, your guys' comments, your guys' questions. We basically just discuss the latest news in the video game industry. I'm not even going to give you guys my spiel about super chats or channel memberships because, to be honest with you, I shouldn't be talking about that stuff until I can get back to actually having consistency. So I'm not even going to go into all of that. If you want to do a super chat, great. If you want to be a channel member, great. But I'm not even going to focus on that because I got to get consistently back to just streaming again. So whatever, guys, drop it all in the chat. Questions, comments, whatever. We're going to talk about the big news. There's going to be some polls we're going to run, and let's get rocking and rolling. I think there was a super chat really quick I can hit off the top. Timmer, yes, of course, Timmer. Such a good dude. Timmer72299 dropping a 5 super chat. Thank you so much, Timmer. Hi, Benji. Thoughts on Embracer Group confirming more studio closures on the horizon and layoffs, plus keep being awesome, plus you're close to 5K YouTube subs. Yeah, I saw my YouTube subs actually somehow went up, even without me streaming. So I don't know what happened there. It wasn't like a huge bump, but I noticed I think I gained like 40 subs or something like that. I'm not sure how that happened because I haven't been streaming for a couple weeks, but hey, I appreciate it. I'm finally close to 5K. So for anyone that did join in my weeks off, I appreciate it. Now, this is definitely interesting in terms of the Embracer stuff. If anyone's missed it, Embracer kind of appears to be falling apart, if I'm being honest with you. I'm not sure that Embracer, as we think of them now, will exist in 2 or 3 years. It seems that their plan to go crazy, just buying studios like at an outrageous clip, like even faster than Xbox was. Now, Xbox has way bigger acquisitions than Embracer, right? They're buying stuff like Activision. They're buying like massive Bethesda, massive entities. But Embracer also just went on an absolute blitz buying spree of much smaller studios, but they just bought tons of them. And it appears that strategy of just mass buying as many companies as you can is not paying off. And we're seeing studio closures, we're seeing layoffs. They're saying there's even more coming. So I think, I'm not saying Embracer won't exist in 2 or 3 years. I think they will be much smaller entity than they are now because I believe what they're saying. They're going to lay people off. They're going to close studios. They're going to try and sell studios. The interesting thing here is if I was Microsoft, you guys know I'm not one of these people that's cheering for more and more consolidation. I don't have like a problem with some consolidation, but I've like openly said I don't want any more major publishers to be bought, like the big pubs, because I think we're getting into dangerous territory if that just keeps happening. But I've always said independently owned studios, sure. Interestingly, though, Microsoft, it would be very smart, I think, of Microsoft to buy Crystal Dynamics if they can, because we know that Crystal Dynamics is helping them with Perfect Dark. So there's already a relationship there. Now, the downside about if they bought them is that Crystal Dynamics is making new Tomb Raider games for Amazon, and Amazon's the publisher on that. So, there's a little bit of a thing there. Would Microsoft want that? How much does Crystal Dynamics cost? But that would be interesting just because there's already a relationship there. They're literally building a first-party game right now as we speak. So that's pretty interesting. I suspect you're going to see some of these studios go to some places. Maybe Sony's going to buy a dev or two. Maybe, EA, Activision, or not Activision because they're out of the ballgame now. But I'm sure you're going to see them try and sell off some of these studios. Depends on how much they're asking. And it's pretty crazy. Like I said, I don't think Embracer, as we see them now, exists in a few years. So pretty crazy, Timmer. There's some channel member questions, so let me make sure I focus on those channel members first because that's why they become channel members. Joseki, hi Benji, good to see you're back. Your thoughts on investors/analysts really dumping Square Enix this year? Yeah, crazy. Lost 30% of value. Also, I don't like the all-digital Xbox future I see from the leaks. I'm a fan of vintage anime, 70s, 80s, and the physical market almost disappearing in that market made some of my favorite shows sadly impossible to watch legally. I buy all digital, but I fear a similar future in 20 to 30 years for our console games of today, lost to time and less pirating. Final consideration of all the emails to leak, the one that caught my attention was the one where Phil suggested Nintendo was slow to realize their future exists out of their hardware. I'm sorry, but him thinking he knows how to run Nintendo better than Nintendo was hilariously delusional. Okay, so let's hit each one of these really quick. Thoughts on Square Enix's financial situation? I've been saying this the last few streams. Whenever we've been talking about Square Enix, I think that their continued focus on making Final Fantasy a PlayStation exclusive is a mistake. So I would rapidly pivot from that as soon as they're out of contracts. So Final Fantasy 17 or whatever, because it appears again that 7 Rebirth is again a timed exclusive to PlayStation. It seems this is a shorter window. We'll have to see, because in the past we've thought that exclusive windows for Final Fantasy games were up, and then all of a sudden they never came to other platforms, like the first 7 remake, right? That was supposed to end, that exclusivity arrangement, according to what was like in the trailers and on the box art whenever, long time ago. That was supposed to end at a certain point, and then it didn't. And then we all assumed, oh, well, it must have been that they re-upped it with Intergrade. But again, it's still not being announced for Xbox, for example. So they need to pivot away from this. It's just a big mistake. They got to stop making Final Fantasy a PlayStation exclusive. Some PlayStation fans might be mad about that or whatever, me saying that, but I just think it's the best thing for Square Enix's business to stop that. So first of all, there's that. This game should be, and it's not even really Xbox. Xbox would be a cool bonus for Final Fantasy in terms of you'll get some sales, you'll get a Game Pass bag. But the bigger issue here is, why are these Final Fantasy games not hitting day one on PC? It's just a massive mistake. A massive, just ginormous financial and judgment error to do this. PC is becoming a bigger and bigger platform for selling games. That's just the facts. Even Japanese games. We saw, for example, Tales of Arise do fantastic on PC. That was a very good seller for a JRPG on Steam day one. The fact that these games are not, why is 7 Rebirth not on Steam day one? It's just crazy, right? It's just a crazy business practice. So first of all, they've got to stop doing that. And then also, like, where's the Nier sequel? You have Nier Automata, which is one of your best-selling games in forever, and we're how many years, and there's still not even a sequel announced? Square Enix hinted that they were making a sequel, right? They had hiring. They said that they were making internal development now on the Nier franchise, and yet we're all these years later, and there's still no new Nier. I mean, there's just a lot of just bad decision making happening at Square Enix. That's just the reality of it. So I'm not one of these people that think Square Enix is doomed. You're seeing a lot of doom and gloom about Square Enix. I think that there's some things they can do to improve what's happening with them. Final Fantasy fully multi-platform, hitting all platforms day one, Nier sequel. I mean, these sort of things. So I think that they can get there. But yeah, they are reaping right now some bad business decisions, in my opinion. Second thing, in regards to the all-digital Xbox future, this is interesting because I hate to say it, but this does feel inevitable. I don't think, there's a big question, is this only Xbox that's kind of wanting to pivot there? I think in 10 years, maybe even there's not even a PlayStation shipping with a disc drive. And I hate to say that because I'm someone that, as of now, still buys 90% of his games physical. But I do feel like the industry really wants to kill physical games. And I feel like that's what they kind of want across the board. It's going to be interesting if this new PlayStation that ships, which is heavily rumored by Tom Henderson, I'm very curious if they sell a bundle that includes the disc drive at all, or if all PS5s that get sold are going to be without that disc drive and you have to buy it optionally separate. That's going to be a very interesting thing to keep an eye on. I suspect that they'll do both still. I suspect they'll have some bundled with the disc drive and some bundled without. But if Sony wanted to be really aggressive, they could just ship them all without the disc drive, and then you have to buy it separately, which, I wouldn't be a big fan of that, but it is something they could do if this model really is true. Nintendo won't get away from physical games for a very long time. But I will be honest, 10 years from now, I don't think that 5 years from now we're fully all digital. There's no consoles with disc drives. 10, 15 years? I really wonder. So let's make a poll about that. Let's make our first poll about that. And let's put it this way. How should we phrase it? We'll say, how important are physical games for you? We'll say, very important, buy mostly physical. We'll say, don't care either way, about future. So you just don't care like either way, or we'll just say all digital. Let me think. Are those three good options? Very important. So you're very, very important. Buy mostly physical. You don't care either way. We'll say buy both. That'll be a better way to phrase it. So you buy a lot of physical, a lot of digital, and then we'll just say I'm all digital only. Okay. All right. First poll is in the chat. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Now, again, these are old plans. Now, they're not super old. They're from last year, I believe is the rumor, from 2022. But you never know. Maybe Microsoft's going to ship an attachable disk drive that can connect through the USB-C port or something. You know what I mean? We'll have to see. But I will say that, personally speaking, I'd love for Xbox to continue shipping some sort of option with a physical drive. But we'll have to see. And then the last thing about, in regards to Nintendo moving away from hardware, their games existing outside of their own hardware, that would be an area that I actually do disagree with Phil on. Yeah, I would say I do disagree with Phil on that one. So about that specific part, his comments about Nintendo realizing their games exist beyond their hardware. I don't think Nintendo right now has any reason to put their games beyond their hardware. You know, it makes sense for Xbox when you're not selling 100+ million units of hardware to put your games everywhere possible. Whenever you're a Nintendo who's shipping, or not even just shipping, who's selling, you know, maybe the best-selling console of all time in the Switch, and if not best-selling of all time, it's going to be right there, right neck and neck with the best-selling platforms of all time. Whenever you're selling that kind of hardware, and you can move the amount of first-party games that they can on that hardware, Nintendo has zero incentive to put their games anywhere else. You know, that's just the reality of it. So I don't see Nintendo putting their games on PC, for example, day one, or on other cloud streaming platforms for a very, very long time. If we're talking about like the full future of humanity, you know, 50 years down the line, sure, maybe 50 years from now, you start seeing Mario on Steam. But like, do I expect that sort of situation anytime in the next 25 years? No. Nintendo just doesn't really have any reason to. As long as they don't make massive errors like they did with the Wii U, for example, as long as they continue to make the correct decisions, they have such a massive audience, like they're fine. They have no reason to put their games anywhere else. For Xbox, it does make sense. For Nintendo, not really. It doesn't make sense for them to go beyond their hardware. Kazimo saying, hello, Benji. How are you? Channel member, great to see you, Kazimo. I am, not doing well. But, hopefully at some point things get better. You know, that keeps being the hope, but it keeps not happening. But thank you, Kazimo. I appreciate you being here. Anthony M. Johnson, channel member, saying, hi, what's up, Anthony? David Taylor sounds fine, channel member. Split End re-upped their membership for 5 months. Thank you so much, Split End. Shout out to Split End. Great friend of mine doing great work at Gaming Trend. He's got previews of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth up. He's got previews is the Alan Wake 2 stuff up yet? I think it's up. Alan Wake 2, all sorts of stuff. Always check out the work that Split End does over at Gaming Trend. He's excellent, and he's, of course, a great friend of mine and helps mod the channel. Saying, much love, my man. October is going to both rock and suck. Yay, being a journo. Is this the greatest gaming year ever? I think there's a strong argument that 2023 is going to go down as definitely one of the best gaming years ever. There's going to be some counter arguments, right? There's been a couple really amazing years that give this year a run for its money. But if these last few big releases we have coming up hit, and they hit hard, if Spider-Man 2 is excellent, if maybe Avatar surprises, we got a new Forza on the way. There's like still a lot of big games. We got Alan Wake 2. We've got so much in October. You're not joking. October is an absolute madhouse. Mario Wonder. There's like a real chance 2023 is the best year ever. Yeah. Like it's definitely in the conversation. If these last few months go well, if a lot of these games score high, it would have to be, I think, for sure, top 3, top 4, like no matter what, and strong arguments for number 1, depending on tastes, right? Everyone's taste is different. But 2023 right now is very much looking like it's going to go down in the books as one of the best years ever in the history of gaming. Yes, absolutely. Definitely. And good luck to you in October trying to cover all this stuff. Timber with a 5 super chat. Thoughts on the Xbox Game Pass 30 million LinkedIn leak on Fallout 4, 25 million unit shipping as per the leak, the Unity drama / CEO opinion. Thanks for your second super chat, Timmer. The 30 million LinkedIn leak, yeah, I think that's got to be real. Shout out to you I think you're the one who found that, Timmer, so shout out to you for finding it. I would think that's probably real because I don't see any reason why he would post that on his LinkedIn if it wasn't real. For anyone that missed it, an employee, either current or former, I don't remember which one, put on his LinkedIn profile that he helped grow Game Pass to over 30 million subscribers. Like, I don't know why you'd put that if you weren't at 30 million, right? Because it would just be like a lie on your resume. And then he quickly edited that off. I'm sure someone talked to him once it got found and was like, hey, we've never announced this number, so you need to remove that. So I would think it's real. There's no real reason to think it's not at 30 million. They've said every quarter that Game Pass continues to show growth. So, you would have to think that they're probably were at 30 million at one point. If they're still there, I don't know. None of this stuff's been made public, but I don't see why that would be on your LinkedIn unless that really happened. So they probably are at 30 million, and they just haven't announced it. Fallout 4, 25 million units shipped. I don't remember what time frame that was in, but obviously huge seller. The Unity drama, wow. I mean, talk about a way to potentially completely kill your entire engine. For anyone that missed this, they were basically, Unity announced that they were going to charge devs like per install of the game and like of games that they ship on Unity. And this was met with very, very obviously negative pushback from the development community. I don't know if Unity can recover from this, if I'm being honest with you. We'll see, but like the thing is even if they pivot away from this announcement, which it appears they're like trying to kind of do, they broke trust in such a way that I think a lot of people that build games on Unity are going to be very scared about what they might try and change in the future. I think you're going to see a lot of people abandoning Unity. So they may have literally shot their business in the back. I don't know. We'll have to see how this plays out. But this was like such a poor decision that, man, it might have killed Unity. Like literally, it might have killed Unity. So we'll have to see. This is one of those things that you won't know overnight. We'll just have to see, do devs keep shipping games on Unity? Do they keep supporting Unity? Or are they just out? That's one of those things that will play out over time. But it was a horrendous decision. I can't even imagine announcing that. Highlander has been a channel member now for 5 months, re-upped. Thanks so much, Highlander. It's great to see you, man. Glad you're back. Hope you take care of yourself. Well, I am not taking care of myself right now. Well, in some ways I am. My diet is like excellent. But there's some other stuff that's not, With the CMA and Microsoft with ABK, it now looks like it'd be very hard for anyone to acquire Ubisoft. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I think it's over for Microsoft. Like, I think Microsoft can't buy any more publishers. The ABK thing came down to such the wire. It was such a battle. It took so long, cost so much money. And the end of the day, they're going to slip it through. And some people are going to look at that as evidence that Microsoft can continue to just keep doing this because, hey, it was a massive battle, but in the end, they eventually got ABK. Some people are going to have that opinion, but that's not the way I see it. The way I see it is Microsoft's going to look at this and see how freaking challenging it was to get all of this done. And it's going to be a huge deterrent, I think, for them to pursuing this ever again. Again, whenever you're saying ever again, the whole expanse of time, you can't say that, but I would say anytime soon. I think that Microsoft absolutely can buy independent studios still. I think they'll be able to get smaller individual studios still, no problem. But I think as a giant publisher, like let's say Microsoft going for Ubisoft, yeah, I think that would get shut down. I really do. I think that at that point, I think regulators were already so tough on ABK. Yes, Ubisoft's way smaller, but they're going to say, hey, dude, we already allowed Bethesda. We allowed you to barely slip through ABK. Now you're trying to get another one of the major publishers. Like, no, we're putting our foot down on this one. So I think for Microsoft specifically, they can't buy any more major publishers. I don't think that's true industry-wide, though. You know, I hate to say it, but I think that if Amazon wanted to buy Ubisoft, they absolutely could. I think they'd have no issue buying Ubisoft. You know, if Apple decided they wanted to buy Ubisoft, I think they'd have no issues buying them. So I think it's more of a case that Microsoft is completely shut down on major publishers. I'm interested if they would allow Sony. Sony has acquired a lot of studios, but they haven't gone on a publisher spree like Microsoft did. However, they are considered the market leader. I know Nintendo is the market leader right now in terms of hardware sales for like their current platform, but for just like total industry spend, you know, Sony is seen as the industry leader. So I'm curious if they would allow Sony to buy someone like Ubisoft. My hunch is they probably would, just because Sony hasn't done one of these mega deals yet, but you never know. It'll be interesting. But I do think for Microsoft it's done, yes. I don't think they can buy any more publishers. Ken B with a 5 super chat. Thank you so much, Ken. Seems like everyone is inclined to share their detailed opinions about Starfield more than any other game I can recall. What is it about this game? It is a lightning rod. You know, almost no game in my entire time on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. I think the replies to anything I tweet about Starfield are the most toxic of any game I've ever covered. I actually think that. I think it's the most. I think it's the most... You know, in the 6 years that I've been on Twitter, I'm trying to think if there was another one. I think it's the most toxic discussion on any game I've ever covered. I do think that. I can't recall another one. You know, of course, anytime there's a big exclusive, there's going to be fanboy battles. But the Starfield is like a whole nother level of toxicity. Now, why is it? What is it about this game? To me, that's actually very easy to answer. It's a giant Bethesda game that's now not on PlayStation. You know, Fallout is a massive franchise that sold tons on PlayStation. Elder Scrolls, massive franchise that sold a ton on PlayStation. This is the first giant game that's gone exclusive from a studio that Microsoft bought since they did this spending spree, right? We've talked about it before. There's been other releases, right? Obsidian released Pentiment, but that was like a small game. You know, you had... Yes, Playground has released Forza games, but everyone kind of thought about Playground as an Xbox studio anyways, even before the acquisition, because they basically just made Forza Horizon games. So they were already kind of seen as first party. Yes, you had, oh my God, the Ghostwire devs. My brain's not working. You guys know all the stuff I'm going through. But anyways, Hi-Fi Rush, right? You had Tango. Yes, you had that release, but again, it wasn't this huge game. Like Starfield was that first one that was that massive AAA from a major studio that sold tons on PlayStation that's now not on the platform. Like that was always going to lead to massive toxicity. Whether that game got a 95 Metacritic, whether that got a 70 Metacritic, whether it got a mid-80s Metacritic, like no matter what, Starfield was going to be a place where fanboys decided they were going to have their battleground on. And that is what has happened. I'm still playing the game. I've put a ton of time into it. I think I'm at like almost 70 hours now of playtime. I'm enjoying it a ton. It's not a perfect game at all. There's some definite issues in Starfield. I think the amount of loading screens is my biggest problem. Like my biggest issue with Starfield by far is that there are so many loading screens. Now, luckily, a lot of them are pretty short. But the amount of times I'm just opening a door in a city and I'm having to go to a loading screen, it's like, wow, it is pretty overwhelming at times, especially in current gen where we've gotten used to massively reduced loads. That is not the case for Starfield. So that's my biggest issue with the game. I get like the loading screens going from planet to planet. I'm sure there's tech reasons why even in a city I'm hitting tons of loading screens, but that is my biggest complaint. Like once I'm on a world, once I'm in a city, the game would flow so much better if just like once you are there, there's no loading screens going into buildings and stuff. That is a big bummer. So that's my biggest issue with it. You know, there's a few other things. Not a perfect game, but I'm really enjoying it. I've put a ton of time in Starfield. I'm really, really enjoying it. Benji here with a 5 super chat. Thank you so much, Benji. Hi, Benji. It seems we have a glimpse of next gen. It seems it will be all around cloud, AI, ML, hybrid, customization, and improved online experience thoughts. Okay, let's talk about this leak about next gen Xbox. So for anyone that missed it, basically, I mean, Benji sums it up here well. We got quite a bit of, surprisingly, quite a bit of info about their plans for the next Xbox. Now, of course, we didn't get exact specs. We didn't get, hey, here's the teraflop on the GPU we're targeting, and here's the clock speeds, and here's the exact CPU. Though we did get an idea about what they're looking at, right? They're thinking about going ARM. They were debating about going for the next Zen. Like, that was a very interesting thing to see. But we did get a very good overarching view of the vision. That's what I would say. We got a good look at the vision they had of the next Xbox. Benji, I am actually somewhat skeptical that the cloud stuff is going to stay in. I think that might have been what Phil was hinting at when he said some of this is old plans. I suspect that mid-gen refresh that we saw for that new Series X, I suspect that is 100% still the exact same. And the main reason I think that is because that was for a product that was coming fairly soon, right? I believe that leaked document was dated to 2022, so just last year, and it was a console that they planned on shipping as soon as next year. So that's a very short window. I doubt much changed there. Maybe a few tweaks or whatever, but I suspect that's probably going to launch and look very, very similar to the product that was in that slide. Where I think that things that were so far off and that could change is possibly on that next-gen platform, because here's the thing. Of course, it's going to have some sort of cloud capability. That's just the reality, right? Gaming in general is pushing for cloud streaming, whatever. But the hybrid compute part, right, where they're basically talking about things like splitting the compute resources between the native hardware and also computing in the cloud. Even in 2028, I don't know that the tech will be there to support a giant install base of 50 million people, let's just say. Let's just say the next Xbox sells 50 million consoles. Could be more, could be less. Let's say they sell 50 million. Are you going to be able to support the cloud server of, obviously not all 50 million of those consoles are going to be online at once, but if you're really having rendering coming from these other places, you're talking about a big game. I mean, tens of millions of people at once instancing. I just don't know that that's going to be there. So the cloud part is the biggest part to me that I'm somewhat skeptical if that happens. Now, AI is obviously going to be a massive part of any next-gen platform. Things like DLSS is just becoming way too important. You're seeing that absolutely explode on the PC side. We have very credible reports Switch 2 is going to be shipping with DLSS. Now, obviously, Microsoft's probably going to continue using AMD, so they're not going to be DLSS, but it's going to be some sort of AI upscaling and things like that. That's going to be very important for next-gen consoles, both PlayStation and Xbox. So this sort of stuff wasn't too surprising to me. The big surprise was them talking about hybrid cloud native hardware compute, and I'm skeptical that that's actually how that platform ships. But I could be wrong. And let's do a poll about that. So let's finish the current poll. The current poll is I asked you, how important are... Wow, and see, this is why, guys. Tiny sample size, but again, this is why. This is why they're trying to move away. Listen to this. How important are physical games for you right now in last place? Very important by mostly physical at only 20%. 39% of you don't care either way. You buy both, so you just don't care. So in other words, if things do move to all digital, maybe you would be slightly annoyed, but you don't really care. And the leader, 41%, all digital only. Wow. So you're talking again in my tiny poll, only 20% are just very are physical focused still. Shows you, man. You know what I mean? I'll be honest, in 10 years or so, I don't know that we're really going to have consoles with disk drives. I really don't know. Again, Nintendo will be the longest holdout. But Xbox and PlayStation, man, I don't know. All right, let's run the second poll here. And let's do that about that next-gen Xbox. Will next-gen Xbox keep its... let's change that. How do you feel about next-gen Xbox having heavy cloud integration? We'll ask it that way. Excited. As long as tech works. No opinion either way. Dislike cloud. How should I phrase it? Dislike cloud being so essential, we'll say. Because it sounds like it's like essential to the console. All right. Cool. All right, let's move on to the next one, guys. Where we at? MD re-upped his membership for 5 months. Thank you so much, MD. Great to see you. Always one of the kindest people in the chat by far. Always so supportive. You're the man, MD. Thank you so much. Benji, you have over 75,000 people that have your back no matter what. I got to keep that in mind, man. Keep going, keep pushing, and never surrender. The people are with you. Jesus. You know, MD, I'm not exaggerating when I say I look forward every single time that you post something in chat. You are always the nicest, the most supportive. I mean, there's a ton of people, so I shouldn't say just you. It's just you always have such kind comments, MD. And that's great advice. You know, I got to remember, I mean, 75,000 people following me on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. That is not an insignificant amount of people. You know, in my, I'm not going to go on this long. Don't worry, guys. But, you know, in my personal life, I a lot of times feel lonely and, you know, maybe that I don't have people having my back necessarily. But I got to remember, you know, yeah, it's online, but it's 75,000 people. I mean, that's a lot of people. When you think about 75,000 people in one spot, for example, think about how many people that is. Absolutely mind-blowing. I got to keep that in mind. It's great advice, MD. Anytime I'm feeling down, I got to keep that in mind. Kellegrim has become a channel member, and I know Kellegrim personally. Thank you so much, Kellegrim. It's great to see you, buddy. Thank you for becoming a channel member. You're the man, dude. And it's great to see you here, Kellegrim. I hope you're doing well, buddy. Highlander with a 10 super chat. Wow, very generous. Thank you so much, Highlander. I mean, because of the fact that Ubisoft... Oh, this is actually a good point. Good point. The rights to stream ABK games. The CMA said Microsoft cannot acquire Ubisoft for 10 years, and I think Microsoft will block Sony from getting Ubisoft. Oh, that is actually a great point that I completely forgot about, Highlander, is that the fact that Ubisoft has the ABK streaming rights. Yeah, that is a great point, actually. That is a bit of a deterrent for acquisition. Great point. Highlander, you didn't need to do a 10 super chat for that comment because that is very generous for that. But that is a good point. Yeah, you have a good point. Ubisoft actually might be a difficult target for acquisition now. To see how that would play out, like with regulators, and what would happen to those streaming rights, right? What does the contract say about if Ubisoft gets acquired by another entity? Do those streaming rights go to the next entity? Do they become like open? Like, that's very interesting to what the contract would say. Great point though. I wasn't thinking about that, Highlander. That's a very, 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 very good point. JCat, great to see you in the chat. What is up, JCat? Great to see you, JCat. Thanks for helping mod the channel, man. Haven't seen you in a little bit because I haven't been streaming, but it's great to see you, JCat. So happy to see you here. All right, super chats are cleared. Let's focus on some channel member, just regular questions, guys. Chris saying, Benji is back, and all exclamations. I'm happy to be back. JCat saying, welcome back. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much. I have to get back to consistent. I have to be doing this every week. Ross Wilson, channel member. Hey, Benji, curious to hear your thoughts on all the Unity... that we talked about it. We talked about all the Unity stuff that has happened the last few weeks, including the statement they put out today. If you've seen... I actually haven't seen today's statement, so I can't comment on that. I actually didn't see the statement today. I've, I know my game coverage has been really poor on Twitter and X recently, and that's because I've been, like, really avoiding my phone. You know, I haven't been tweeting much. I had someone reply to me, and I think they were upset about me trying to say that I was, like, being, too pro Xbox or something just because I didn't tweet, like, bad Xbox news. I just was covering the Starfield 10 million players. And I replied to him and I was just like, dude, I'm barely tweeting right now at all. So I'm just throwing out random tweets whenever I feel mentally healthy enough to actually look at my phone. I've been missing tons of stuff. I haven't even been looking at my phone for extended periods of time. Not even logging into Twitter or X for extended period of time. So I did miss the statement today. I'll have to get to it. I'm not on top of things like I normally am, unfortunately. This has been a hard year for me. Hamishly Ford, hello, Benji. Missed you a ton, brother. Missed you too, Hamish. Great to see you. Thank you for always being in the chat. Hope you're doing good now. Starfield really did not do the numbers I was expecting on Steam. I agree. I was saying 500,000 plus CCU. Seems like Game Pass PC is big now. I 100% agree with this take, Hamishly Ford. The biggest learning lesson that I got from Starfield, like the biggest, right? There was a ton of like questions about Starfield, like, you know, hardware impacts and game sales or whatever. And there's all going to be more data coming out about that. That will be interesting too. But the number one thing that I learned from Starfield is that Game Pass PC is much bigger than I thought it was. And it at least is much bigger than I thought it was now. Now, maybe Starfield itself drove a lot of PC Game Pass subs, but Phil told us quite a long time ago that the biggest growth area they had for Game Pass was PC. And we had these talks leading up to Starfield launch, right? And I was also expecting significantly higher for Starfield on Steam. In fact, most of my audience was. If you remember, I was running polls about how it would do on Steam. And I remember the one poll we ran right before launch, the one that got the least amount of votes, and I think there was 4 or 5 options on that poll. The one that got by far the least was under 500,000. Like almost everyone was expecting more, 500,000 as the floor, myself included, or much higher. And we had been talking on these streams and I kept saying, yeah, Game Pass is going to cannibalize Starfield some, but I kept saying like that I thought that it would cannibalize on PC less than it would on console. I kept saying that. I was like, I'm expecting heavy cannibalization on console, but people love Steam so much that I think like most sales, most volume for Starfield will still be through Steam instead of Game Pass. That is not true. And it's very clear it's not true whenever we were hearing that this game was doing over 1 million concurrent players. And of course, it's going to include PC and Xbox, but Bethesda games are huge on PC. And the fact it was only in the 200,000 range at the time on Steam, and yet it was doing over 1 million concurrent, that tells you that, in my opinion, on PC, more people were playing this game on Game Pass than they were on Steam. That was a big shock. So I would say that the number one thing I've learned now from Starfield moving forward, I've always taken first-party games on Steam and, removed in my mind some of the numbers, right? When I would look at like Forza Horizon, I'd be like, okay, obviously some people are playing this on PC Game Pass, but I suspect like the bulk are playing this on Steam. Now moving forward, that is not the case. That's not the case. So anytime we look at those any future Xbox first-party games on Steam and how they're performing, it's still going to be valuable information because these are sales, while PC Game Pass won't be sales. But we are going to have to really keep in mind now that we need to temper our expectations on big PC Xbox games, how they're going to do on Steam specifically, because PC Game Pass is much bigger than I or many of us realized. Absolutely. Now, whether that was the case, whether Starfield was an exception and that got a ton of people to subscribe to Game Pass for that month to play it, or whether that was, just where PC Game Pass is now, that is hard to say, but it's definitely a big learning lesson, yes. Anthony M. Johnson, Mercenary Knight Publishing. The most interesting Xbox leak to me was the fact that cloud gaming currently costs Microsoft on average 40 cents per hour of play. That means that Xbox loses money if you stream 25 hours a month. So how important will cloud gaming actually be in the future? Do you think they stick with this cloud console hybrid, or is that one of the areas where they pivoted? Great question, Anthony. Great to see you here in the chat. Lines up with some of the stuff I was saying. I suspect that's where they pivoted. I suspect that this next Xbox, again, will it have some form of cloud? Absolutely. The tech is here now. It's a thing that you just kind of have to support in some ways. But Anthony, I agree that cloud in gaming is not growing the way I think that many people in the industry thought it would. Now, I never expected cloud to explode. And again, maybe in 20 years, we're all playing through the cloud and stuff. But I think that mega companies like Microsoft looked at how, hey, everyone streams music, no one buys music, and no one, natively installs music. It's all just Spotify or, Apple Music, and everyone's like, hey, no one's really buying DVDs anymore and just watching a native version of it, right? They're watching through Netflix or they're watching through Disney Plus, like these other forms of media. It's just all streaming. So of course that's the way gaming is going to go, right? No, gaming is not the exact same thing as those other forms of entertainment. I think for a long time still, even if the tech gets amazing, I still think people are just going to install their games. I think that that's going to be the case for most people for a very long time. At some point in the far future, maybe we are all streaming games, but I don't think that's coming soon, and I don't think that's as soon as next gen by any means. So I suspect that maybe when Microsoft was making these initial plans, they were still a little more bullish about how cloud was going to play out, and maybe the growth is much smaller than they expected. I think that they said, one of the things Phil said in one of the emails is they asked them how much like cloud grew, or what their investments were in cloud currently, and he basically said like zero, like it was like plateaued, and that's early. Yeah, I don't see cloud being like this massive mover in gaming for quite a long time. So yes, Anthony, I would agree with that. I think one of the areas they may have pivoted, which Phil was referencing when he said, hey, some of this is old, some of this is not exactly the way we think anymore. I suspect the stuff around their next console might be a big part of what he was talking about. David Taylor, Splatoon on PC would make a killing. Absolutely. Listen, whenever I said that Nintendo, I don't see them putting their games anywhere else for a very long time, that's not me saying they couldn't make a bunch of money by putting their games other places, but I think Nintendo still wants to sell hardware. I think that's the kind of company they are. And putting Splatoon on PC or Mario on PC, there's no doubt it would impact console sales to some degree. There's not a doubt in my mind that Xbox putting every game that they make on PC is going to have some console cannibalization from that effect. Now, I don't think it's a massive number. I talk all the time how, in many ways to me, PC gamers and console gamers there's definitely a separation there between the two. There's some overlap, but there is a bit of separation too. But I think Nintendo is fully focused on their own hardware and selling their own ecosystem and their own locked down hardware. And I can't see that changing anytime soon. But yeah, they could make a lot of money putting them on Steam, sure. But I just cannot see Nintendo doing that. Oh, Split End says you're welcome to show off your thermos if you want to, by the way, Benji. Yo, yeah, it's actually a bit of a mess behind me. I'm blocking it. I will next stream. Split89 is the man. He's an incredible friend. He gifted me the Alan Wake 2 thermos. That's a replica from Alan Wake, and he's such a good friend, man. You guys know how big of an Alan Wake fan I am, and it was just the most incredible gift ever. Whenever he told me he got me this, I was like, bro, are you serious right now? But yeah, I'll show it next stream. I don't want to get up because this thing behind me is pretty messy and the chair's doing a good job of covering it. But thank you. You're the best, man. Joseki, Starfield toxicity has nothing on the Xenoblade 2 Twitter discourse for the past 6 consecutive years, basically weekly. Well, Joseki, I am completely out of that community. So I'm not saying you're wrong because it probably absolutely is. I just have like zero interaction with that community, like the community playing Xenoblade hardcore. So I'm sure it is toxic. I don't cover Xenoblade much on my Twitter because I haven't played them, first of all. I have tweeted about like some sales milestones, but I'm not like constantly covering it. So Starfield, I think, is the most toxic thing that I've ever covered for a specific game. The most toxic thing I've ever covered is Activision Blizzard acquisition. Like, that's even so far beyond Starfield, it's unbelievable. But for an individual game, it's Starfield. I'm not saying it's the most toxic game ever in the industry. There definitely could be some more toxic discourse. It's just the most toxic game I've ever covered. Like, heavily. Telegram says, don't know why I hadn't subscribed yet. Apologies. Telegram, dude, no apologies needed, buddy. No one should ever feel obligated to donate in super chats or become channel members. No one should ever feel pressured for that at all, guys. That's just a way to like help support me. You know what I mean? All right. Guancos, channel member, welcome back. We really appreciate your insight and kind demeanor. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. Which studios besides Larian and Gunfire Games Remnant 2 made the leap this year? Like the big leap. Well, I mean, you're really covering the two that really did it, especially Larian. Like, Larian's the studio that, man, wow. You look at Larian pre-Baldur's Gate 3, and then you look at, which I know they had some sales successes before that. I'm not trying to say like Larian had never sold a game that sold well, but they never had a game that sold like Baldur's Gate 3 did. You know, that was a studio that, and reviewed like that, right? That combination, that's such a powerful combination when you get a game that can just be so critically beloved, plus sell such a high volume. Like, Larian is by far the studio for 2023 that made the biggest leap in terms of like where they were pre and where they are post launch of a game. There's just no one, and no one after this year will come close. Like, Larian will have, if there was an award for like breakthrough studio, you know what I mean? It would absolutely go to Larian. Larian's been around for a long time, but they're the breakthrough studio of the year. Zero question. Gunfire also made a big leap, right? Because Remnant 2 sold fantastic for them. I would say one more that, and this is going to sound incredibly biased, I know, but one studio I think that can take a leap, not to the degree that Larian did by far, but a studio I think has real potential to take a leap is Remedy. And again, I know I'm incredibly biased, but every single piece of thing that I see on Alan Wake 2 looks absolutely fantastic. Every single preview keeps saying that this is essentially the best game Remedy has ever made. I'm not saying that Alan Wake 2 is going to come out here and sell 10 million copies, because it's not. But I think that Alan Wake 2 might be that game that really gets Remedy over the hill in terms of like really delivering a really highly reviewed game that people really, really like, that sells well. I'm not expecting Alan Wake 2 to be huge at all. But if it can sell at Control levels or even a little higher than Control, because Remedy's been very clear that Control they see internally as a big success, and that's not a huge seller. I can't remember what the last sales milestone is. Where is Control's total sales at? It's not that high, but it's very successful for them. Where is that at? 3 million. 3 million units. Right? It only sold 3 million. And that's a game that they consider a big success. So I think Alan Wake 2, man, it might be something that can really take them to the next level. But again, when I say next level, it's nowhere like we're talking about Larian, where they just become this mega, unbelievable performance. But I think Remedy has a real opportunity, if Alan Wake 2 is as good as all of the previews are saying, to make a bit of that jump. Benji with a channel member question. Benji, I'm shocked by the amount Microsoft paid for the third-party games on Game Pass. $300 million for Jedi Survivor must be more than the cost of the game itself. I mean, Jesus. Well, that was only an estimate, Benji, because it's not on Game Pass. That was Microsoft. So that sheet that leaked, that was Microsoft estimating how much they would have to pay to put a game day one on Game Pass. And yeah, some of them are insane. And I'm actually not that surprised by that, because I've said a lot, like, if you're a third-party studio making a AAA game, I don't know why you would ever put a game day one on Game Pass. And that's the same thing that Strauss Zelnick, for example, from Take-Two has said. He's basically said, like, we're never putting a game, like a big game day one on Game Pass. I mean, maybe he changes his mind at some point, but he's literally said, like, we don't see any reason to do that. So if you are a major publisher, you have a huge AAA game, and it's a game that you think is going to sell a lot of copies, I have no idea why you would put that on a subscription day one. I think it makes a lot of sense for indies, because the reality is indies, it's hard for them to get total, like a high number of sales. Every once in a while you get that breakthrough indie game that goes on to sell a ton of units. But for every one indie game that does that, there's like 100 that are just lost to the ether and you know, get very low sales. So I think for indie games, subscription deals like we saw with Sea of Stars, where they were both on Game Pass and on PlayStation, getting that guaranteed money for a game for a small studio, I think that makes a ton of sense. If I was an indie studio and I could get one of these deals, I absolutely would take them up on that. But these big games, like I'm sure they would have to spend, yes, like the cost of the game, its development for Jedi Survivor to get down there day one. Yeah, I'm sure EA and Respawn would be like, absolutely freaking not. You know how many copies of this game we're going to sell? Dude, Jedi Survivor is still in the top 5 best-selling games of the year, right? And that game's still in the top 5 best-selling games of the year, and that's with an atrocious PC version and a console version that, let's be honest, had a lot of issues, and is still in the top 5 best-selling games of 2023 so far. Like, that's a huge selling game. It would cost them a fortune to try and get that day one on Game Pass. They would probably have to pay, the budget of the game. So I'm not too shocked that some of these AAAs are super expensive, because it's just in these publishers' best interest to not put them day one. Now, I totally think it's a great idea once your sales have declined, right? Once you're in that, like, we know how game sales work. Most of them, there's a huge peak and then a big decline after that. Once your game is far past its peak in sales, once your game's been out for 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 months, sure, then strike that Game Pass deal. But day one, yeah, it's a bad idea. I think the exception might be multiplayer games. I think multiplayer games might be worth putting on a subscription day one, because you're trying to get those microtransaction sales and DLC sales, and something like that. Just getting as many players in the door as possible is important, because then you can just sell them those microtransactions and DLCs. So that would be the one thing I would make an exception on. Multiplayer games, I think, might be maybe a good idea to put day one on a subscription, but like a big single player only, AAA game, no, not if you're third party. Kellegrim with a 10 super chat. Dude, you became a channel member today and a 10 super chat. That's very generous, buddy. Do you see cloud gaming being viable for our rural area? No, not really. Well, internet infrastructure in rural areas is getting better, but it's still not perfect. Also, if you and the fam get some time, we'd be happy to host a bonfire out at the farm. We can chill and cook some s'mores. Hit me up. I will definitely try to, Kellegram. I'm going through a lot of issues right now, so I'm trying to get my life stable. And I'm in a bad spot mentally, but you know what, man, I really appreciate that. Maybe we will have to hook up sometime soon. In terms of cloud being viable for rural, listen, internet infrastructure is massively improving. Like where I'm at now, I have way fast enough internet to have great cloud streaming if I want. But there's a lot of people that still don't, and that's still going to be true for a long period of time. So yeah, I just think cloud is just not the most attractive option to most gamers in general. I just think if you look at it, even if you have, like I said, I have internet that is by far way fast enough to handle cloud. So far beyond the recommended, it's not even close. And I do zero cloud streaming because it's just, I don't know why I would do that when I can just natively install the game. And it's usually almost always a better experience. And the argument's going to be that, well, eventually cloud will get to the point where it's, just as good of an experience. And I'm sure that's going to happen at some point. And we're getting closer and closer to that. But we're not there yet. We're definitely not there yet for most cases. Highlander, I find it wild that David Jaffe said Starfield is one of his top 3 games of all time. Yeah, listen, game tastes are going to be individual to everyone. It's absolutely not one of my top 3. I don't even know if it's in my top 3 for the year. It's definitely in my top 10. Absolutely, it's in my top 10 for the year. Top 3, though, I don't actually think I would put it top 3. I don't think. Maybe, I'd have to think about that. It's absolutely in my top 10 for the year, though. But listen, that's going to vary person by person. I mean, literally, Alan Wake is one of my favorite games of all time. And that game has what on Metacritic? I am fully aware that most people are not going to have that opinion. You know what I mean? That this is where we get to that territory where it's individual tastes are just, there's going to be games that get huge ranges of scores that might be your personal, one of your favorite games of all time, right? Let me see. What's Alan Wake 2 at? Isn't it low 80s? Or Alan Wake 1? Right, that's a game that has an 83 on Xbox and a 79 on PC, right? You look at that and your average person's going to be not that Metacritic's everything, but they're going to be yeah, there's no way that's in my top 100 games of all time, maybe even. And for me, Alan Wake is definitely in my top 3 games of all time. So it's like, you know, I don't think David's being insincere when he says that. That game just really hit with him, and that's going to happen with some people. I do think it's a great game. I think it might be Bethesda's best game. Like, I honestly think it might be the best game Bethesda ever made. The reviews don't point towards that, but I don't know, man. I think it might be the best game they ever made. Kazumo, I don't think you've had a channel member question answered yet. Where did that go? Kazumo. Benji, I want to ask you about Grand Theft Auto 6. What do you think is Take-Two's expectations for Grand Theft Auto 6? How many billions are they expecting? Well, the actual number is out there because they put it out in a forecast. Like, basically Take-Two told us whenever Grand Theft Auto 6 is launching without telling us whenever it's launching. Let's see. I can tell you exactly what they're expecting for the fiscal year it's launching. Let's see. I'm trying to find the exact number, so I don't know it off the top of my head. I know it's a record-breaking one, but it's for their fiscal year 2025. Come on, where's the number at? I know that IGN included it in an article. Come on. Rebecca Valentine. Here we go. Here's Rebecca Valentine's article. There we go. I know she included it. She's great. Over $8 billion. So over $8 billion in net bookings. There's your answer. Now that's for Take-Two as a whole. So you can't say all of that is going to be Grand Theft Auto 6. But obviously the biggest contributor by far is going to be Grand Theft Auto 6. So there's your answer. Here's the exact quote, by the way. For the last several years, we have been preparing our business to release an incredibly robust pipeline of projects that we believe will take our company to even greater levels of success. In fiscal 2025, we expect to enter this new era by launching several groundbreaking titles that we believe will set new standards in our industry. They're talking about Grand Theft Auto 6. And help us achieve over $8 billion in net bookings. Wow. So there's your answer. That's exactly what they're expecting for the Grand Theft Auto 6 launch year. Now, again, that's not only Grand Theft Auto 6. That's all of Take-Two. But the number one factor for that number is Grand Theft Auto. So there's your answer. They didn't say Grand Theft Auto, but that's what they're referring to. Highlander with a 5. My daughter turned 12 this week. She wants me to take her to the Ren Fair and buy her a real axe. Sick. My wife blames me as I collect swords and axes. Well, do it, Highlander. That's awesome, dude. That'd be a lot of fun. That's a cool thing to collect, you know. I don't have anything like that, but I've seen some people with like really cool sword collections and stuff. I think that's a cool thing to collect. Like they're just very cool looking. So awesome, dude. Totally take her, buy her that axe. You know, me and you are both daughter dads. I know you're like me. If the daughter wants something, she's probably going to get it. That's just the truth, man. That's just probably the truth. Joseki, that estimate sheets perfectly explains why Microsoft needs first-party games for Game Pass. You are correct. They'll never grow their subs with AA indies beyond certain thresholds, and third-party AAAs are too costly. That's an exact correct assessment, Joseki. You are 100% correct. That's why first-party games are so important for Game Pass, and that's why I've been saying for a while, like, I'm not shocked we haven't seen explosive Game Pass growth. People keep being like, you know, and we need to see where things are after Starfield. Hopefully we get an updated sub number sometime soon. But, you know, people have been like, it kind of looks like Game Pass isn't having huge growth anymore. And I keep saying, like, that doesn't surprise me at all. What has Xbox released in the last year and a half? You know what I mean? Now we had Starfield, and now we're going to have Forza, and 2024 has a lot of releases. But you're 100% correct, Joseki. The main driver of Game Pass is going to be big first-party games hitting day one on the service. Indies are great. AA games are great. They can help growth somewhat, but the things that's really going to push subs is when you're getting a consistent level of big exclusive content. How does Netflix drive their subscriber growth? Stranger Things, The Witcher, Bridgerton, like all of these shows that how do you watch them? You watch them only through Netflix. That's why you subscribe to Netflix. Game Pass, in order to keep having big growth, they've got to have big things hitting the service day one, and that's going to be coming primarily from first party. So it completely makes sense that subscriber growth would stall at the exact same time game releases massively stall. So yes, it's very important. You are 100% correct, Joseki. What up, Samuel? I'm seeing Samuel Tobear's in the chat. Great friend of mine. Check out his work at Windows Central and other places. Great journalist, just like everybody is. And he is so awesome here in saying, I mean, Immortals of Avium probably should have been on Game Pass and or PS Plus. You know what? That's one that EA probably should have tried to make a deal on, because they probably should have looked at that the sales tracking wasn't good. I feel really bad for that studio. Send It Studios, they appear to be kind of screwed. I think they laid off like half their staff. That would have been one of those games where it's like, if you're looking, because these studios all have, forecasts. They all have analysts that work there that are trying to forecast how games are going to sell based on things that they're seeing. And I suspect that they probably had a very clear indicator Immortals was not going to be a huge seller. And that is one that they probably, should have tried to make a deal on, to be honest, to try and get some sort of revenue from it. Hamish re-upped the membership for 5 months. And thanks, Hamish. It's very generous. Anytime I see this 5 months, that means you've been a channel member literally since I started memberships. I think it was 5 months ago. So thank you so much, man. I was really hyped for Starfield, but I did not like it. I get it. Dropped it after a couple of hours. See, here's my advice. And then you say, heard it gets better with time, might give it another shot. This is absolutely true. The beginning of Starfield is the worst part of the game. And I think that's why they're having some decent fall off in the early hours of the game. Starfield didn't truly click with me. Now, I had fun in the early hours. Like, there was some stuff I liked, but I had like let me say this. I had a massively different opinion of Starfield after like 20 and 30 hours, which sounds crazy, but it's the truth, than I had with Starfield after 5 hours. Like, I do think it's true, the thing that you see some people say, that the more you play Starfield, the better the game is. And I think that is absolute truth. Like, I'm having more fun with the game right now, and I'm at like 70 hours in, than I had with the game 10 hours in. It's one of those things that like you kind of have to get in the groove of what Starfield's trying to do. And that's not going to work with everyone. That's just the truth. There's going to be some people that play it after 40 hours and still hate the game, or don't like the game, or disappointed with the game. But I do think it's very true that you don't really feel what Starfield's supposed to feel like in those first 5 hours. You don't really feel what Starfield's supposed to feel like until you hit like hours 20, 30, 40, 50. Like the deeper you play it, the more its flow gets figured out for you. But yeah, it probably has the worst intro of any Bethesda game ever, like in terms of clicking, but I actually think it might be their best game ever. But that's not going to work for everyone. But I've had a lot of people say that they fell off early on Starfield, and I get that, actually. And I can't promise you after 20 or 30 hours you'll like Starfield, but I can tell you I liked the game a lot more then than I did early on. All right, let's hit some free questions. I'm going to go for about 15 or 20 more minutes, because I haven't hit a single one of just the regular free questions today. Sorry, there's been so many channel members and super chats. Johnny G22 saying, what's up, Benji? Hope all's well. Everyone, don't forget to like the video. I very much appreciate that, Johnny G. Great to see you here, man. Pat Fury, sup, Benji? Hope everything is well. Great to see you, Pat. Dangerman1337. Hey, Benji, about the leaks, considering Navi 5 and Zen 6 are out by end of 2025 as rumored. Maybe they are basis for next-gen dev kits, since game dev times are long. Could be. You know, Microsoft, if this console is really launching in 2028, Microsoft will definitely have some sort of prototypes by 2025. Now, I don't think that they'll probably have full dev kits in devs' hands. Usually that's a little over a year or so. I know it depends on on the platform. But usually you have at least, a year plus of at least target spec, right? Maybe you don't have a final dev kit, but you have like, hey, here is the specs for our next platform, like to target, so you can start developing this. So 2025, they should have some sort of prototypes worked out. You'll probably see devs actually start to get some target specs 2026 or so, about 2 years before launch. So final dev kits probably 2027, something like that. And could they be the basis for the next gen? Sure, they could be, yeah. With some tweaks, just depends, but yeah. Rinku, this is not accurate, so I'm not sure what you're saying. Stop saying Starfield is not in the top 20 on Steam or Xbox or Game Pass. If you're talking to me, it is, though. I think it's the second most played game on Xbox, only behind Fortnite, and it's number 1 on Game Pass. Let's double check. So, again, if you're talking to me, if you're saying that I'm saying that, well, I've never said that. And if you're saying it's not that, well, then I apologize. I'm not trying to be mean, but you're just wrong. So right now, Xbox most played games, Starfield is number 2. The only game it's behind is Fortnite, and it's actually ahead of Call of Duty. That's big. That's very big. Fortnite is the only game that's more played than that right now. And if you're talking about Game Pass, it is currently the number 1 game on Game Pass ahead of Grand Theft Auto 5. So I'm not sure if I'm misreading your comment, but either you're saying that I'm saying something I've never said, or you're wrong. And I apologize either way, but that's just the truth. DangerMan1337. So, dev teams finishing their games in 2025-26 can get working early dev kit ASAP for next gen. Navi 5 is probably the first AMD gen to do ML and path tracing properly. Yeah, I think you're pretty much on. Yep. There'll be some tweaks, but yeah, very much could be. I think the docs even said that they were looking at Zen 6. Yeah, Zen 6 or ARM. So that sounds right as the basis. Yes, that does sound correct because Microsoft themselves mentioned Zen 6 in the documents. Bob01, hi Benji, do you find it worrying that Game Pass is under 30 million subscribers? Well, it sounds like it's over from the thing that Timmer mentioned where the employee had it there, but we don't know for sure. 6 years into the service, what could Xbox do if big games like Starfield aren't enough to substantially increase subs? So that's the question. The reality is, am I shocked that it's where it's at? No, because again, like we've been discussing, what is the main reason people are going to subscribe to Game Pass? They're not going to subscribe. And whenever I say your average person, I'm just being honest. Is your average person subbing to Game Pass to play Sea of Stars? Is your average person, like specifically, like, oh, I'm going to subscribe to Game Pass so I can play Sea of Stars? Like, is that the general person? Or is it more likely the general person is going to be like, oh, dang, Starfield is about to come out, or oh, dang, Forza, or oh, dang, Hellblade or Avowed. Oh, I need to subscribe to Game Pass to play that now. That's where most people are going to come from. And what has Microsoft released since 2021 to drive subs? Nothing. Not saying Pentiment's not a good game. Pentiment is a great game. Almost no one subscribed to Game Pass just to play Pentiment. I'm not saying Hi-Fi Rush isn't an amazing game. That game is absolutely in my top 5 games of the year, I think, right now. How many people sub to Game Pass just to play Hi-Fi Rush? Almost nobody, right? It's going to be things like Starfield and Avowed and Fable. If they're good, that's the sort of thing that drives people to subscribe. So that's what they absolutely have to do. Now, if those games come out and they also don't increase subs, then I would say that Microsoft and everyone in the industry needs to understand that there is a ceiling on what subscription growth can achieve. So we don't know yet. We don't know what a consistent Xbox first party means for subscribers because Microsoft has essentially never had that in the history of Game Pass. I know that sounds like pretty intense, but it's actually true. That doesn't mean that they haven't had great games in the last 6 years, but if you looked at those 6 years as a whole, right? If you just looked at that envelope of the last 6 years, and would you say the cadence of big releases is where that they need to be? I would say you can't make the argument that they are. That doesn't mean there's not been some great moments, because there has been. Like Forza Horizon 5 is literally one of my favorite. It is my favorite racing game of all time. they've had hi-fi rushes, they've had some stuff, but in those 6 years, has it been like, ooh, boom, boom, boom? You can just count on Xbox first party to be pumping out 4 or 5, huge exclusives per year that are great. No. So we need to see what happens if Microsoft can get there. If they don't increase subs substantially, then we know the truth is that there's just a hard ceiling on subscription growth in the industry, and people will have to pivot and make decisions after that. Robert Eli, hi Benji, did Game Pass 100% or 90% cannibalize the Starfield sales? Peak 380 in Steam, and now is very well below that. Not even 500,000, not the 1 million you're predicting. People keep saying that. I never predicted 1 million, so that just wasn't a thing that happened. I said it was a game that was tracking like a game that could potentially hit 1 million, basing that off of Steam followers, because the Steam follower counts, one way you can kind of get an idea, it's not going to always be true, but one way you can kind of, just for anyone that wants to use this tool, one way you can kind of get an idea how a game's tracking on Steam, if it's going to be like really, really big or not, look at its following count. So there tends to be a very strong correlation where if a game has a lot of followers pre-launch, that's going to also result, again, you can't say it's 100%, nothing's 100%, but you can say like, wow, if it has a massive following before it's out, because you can click to follow a game or whatever before it's released, it tends to, if you look at games like Hogwarts Legacy, that were #1 on the following charts, had huge followers and then exploded, right? You see that kind of correlation, and Starfield was kind of tracking like a game that could go up into those like Hogwarts type numbers. Didn't play out. And like I said, I think not fully, because I don't think even with Game Pass, I don't think that it was at 800,000-900,000 on PC specifically. It was absolutely over 500,000. There's not a doubt in my mind about that. Whenever you count Steam plus Game Pass, maybe even 600,000, maybe on PC. Hard to know for sure, but Phil gave out that number that it was over 1 million concurrent. Keep in mind, this is not on Xbox One. It's on current gen only. So if I had to guess, this is a total guess, but if I had to guess, were more people playing Starfield on PC when they were over 1 million, or were more people playing it on Xbox? I actually think PC, which would mean that those the peak counts on Steam weren't even 50% of the PC's total player base. So yeah, pretty interesting. I think it mostly comes down to PC Game Pass just being a lot bigger than we thought. I think that's the real story here. Logan Hardy, Benji, I miss your live chats very much. Also, that Spidey 2, yeah, looks amazing. And I'm sorry that I wasn't here for the chats. I had a lot of people reaching out to me about that. Samuel Tolbert, hey Benji, good to see you on another live, bro. What milestone do you think we see Starfield hit before the end of 2023? Well, I mean, here's the thing. It did 10 million in less than a month. Full month 1 numbers are probably going to come in. It's still going to gain a few million more. If you look at I'm considering month 1 from its September 6th launch date. I know it had early access, but they're going to think of month 1 as total launch, like the actual launch date. That's how Microsoft's going to perceive it. So that's how I'm going to look at it right now. That 10 million number was from a few days ago, which would have mean if we're going to the 6th that they still have a few weeks to gain numbers. So I suspect month 1, it's still going to gain a few million more. Month 1's probably going to be like 12, 13 million, something like that. If we're talking September 6th to October 6th, probably around there, 12, 13 million. Year 1, or not year 1, end of year, depends on how holiday sales go, because for hardware, because I think that's going to be where they have the most growth in new players, will be people getting Xbox Series consoles, because so many people, like if you were going to play this game on PC, yes, they're going to get more sales for holiday sales on Steam and stuff like that, but it was already available on a platform that has a massive install base, whereas Xbox Series, right, there's still a lot of Xbox One owners that haven't upgraded to Series yet. We know that because Xbox One sold more than 50 million units, and Xbox One is at like low 20s estimated, like 22, 23 million. So like half of the Xbox One audience hasn't even bought an Xbox Series console yet. So it depends. If they sell a lot of hardware this holiday, they could add a lot of players still till Starfield, because it's going to still be for the rest of the year like the biggest new game on the platform, and it's going to be bigger than Forza Motorsport. So 10 million in less than a month. Over 20, but I don't know exactly where. I don't think they'll hit 30, but I think they'll do over 20. Yeah, over 20. Somewhere over 20 million. Because like I said, I think it's going to be like 12 or 13 million in just the first month. And the idea like it still doesn't have legs and players is just not accurate because, like I said, it's still the second most played game on Xbox right now. The only game on the Xbox platform that's being played more is Fortnite. More people are playing Starfield than Call of Duty. And that's weeks after launch. Patrick, your current game of the year, probably still Tears of the Kingdom. Probably still Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah, that would be, I think. I'm trying to think. I don't think I've had anything past Tears of the Kingdom yet. Really, really like Starfield. It's not my game of the year. Really liked Jedi Survivor. Really liked Hi-Fi Rush. I really liked a lot, but I still think it's probably Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah, Gallagher, no apologies necessary, Benji. We're just glad to get to chat with you. Ah, thank you, man. Thank you. Oh, good point out. Logical error. The Division 3. Yes, what a surprise announcement there. I'm not shocked they're making the Division 3. Division 1 and 2 were both successful titles for Ubisoft. But it was like the way it was announced. It was just a random PR release. You don't see that much for games anymore. Pretty rare. It's not necessarily always at a major trade show, but there's usually at least like a CG teaser or something like that that's put out. Like Ubisoft just did the old, here's a press release with the Division 3. And kind of fun to see that. Tells me it's very far away, right? Division 3 is probably a next-gen game, if I'm being honest with you. If it's just starting development in 2023, that means this game is probably 5 years or more away, which would put you at 2028, which is the targeted launch release of next-gen platforms. So Division 3 is probably going to be a cross-gen game, would be my guess. It's going to be a game that launches on the new consoles that are going to come next-gen as well as the current gen. It's probably going to be one of those cross-gen titles. Cool to see, but like I said, don't expect that anytime soon. That game is, the minimum it's away is 4 years, and more than likely 5 or more. I appreciate the single Halloween decoration in the back, LOL. Yeah, I didn't even put that there. But he's cool. Boo Ghost. Sorry, I'm just looking for questions about stuff that we haven't talked about yet. JCat, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Square Enix is grossly mismanaged. I agree, JCat. I agree. SD, so this is one thing that you're not quite understanding, which is like the point I've made. You're saying putting Final Fantasy on Xbox is the same as not putting it on Xbox. Xbox is dead in Japan. You put Final Fantasy on Xbox not really to drive sales. You put Final Fantasy on Xbox to get a Game Pass bag. That's why you do it. I keep saying that. Why do you guys think Persona is on Xbox, and why do you think that Yakuza is on Xbox? What is the exact same situation on both of those? They're both getting day one Game Pass deals. What does that tell you? Microsoft's throwing money at them. So the reason you put Final Fantasy on Xbox isn't because you expect you're going to sell 2 million units of Final Fantasy on Xbox, because you're not. You put Final Fantasy on Xbox because your PlayStation sales don't go down at all. They stay the exact same as they are right now, quite literally. If you launch Final Fantasy on PS5 and you launch Final Fantasy on Xbox Series S and X, do PS5 sales of Final Fantasy drop at all? Nope. They stay the exact same volume. If you put it on Xbox, you're still getting the same volume of sales on PS5, and then you're going to have Phil Spencer throw you a Game Pass bag. How do we know that? Because he threw a bag at Yakuza series and he threw a bag at Persona series. Phil wants to throw Square Enix the bag, but he can't throw Square Enix the bag right now. So that's why you do it. You don't do it to try and get a ton of sales out of Xbox, because you're not going to get a ton of sales out of Xbox. Xbox wants Final Fantasy to be on Xbox. for the same reason they want Persona on Xbox and for the same reason they want Yakuza on Xbox, because they want the image for the brand that they're not getting passed up on Japanese support. Is Persona selling a ton on Xbox? No, but the games are still coming and they're coming day one. Is Yakuza still selling a ton on Xbox? No, but they're still coming. And in fact, we are getting new announcements of games coming day one. That's because Phil keeps throwing money at them. So for Square Enix, if you go fully multi-platform, your PlayStation 5 sales decrease 0%. They say the exact same as they are now. You get a much bigger initial sales launch on PC because that's a ginormous audience that is not getting this game day one. They're getting it later. And by the time it comes later, that audience is also going to be more willing to wait for sales on the game because they already had to wait for the game, right? If you put that game day one on PC, you now get a huge initial rush of PC sales. You get a huge initial rush of PlayStation 5 sales. And you're also going to get a Game Pass bag from Phil Spencer. It's just financially more money. You're just getting more money. So that is why you go fully multi-platform. You don't go multi-platform trying to sell 5 million units of Final Fantasy on Xbox because it's not going to happen. You throw it on there for the Game Pass effect, which is why Sega is doing it with, Yakuza, and why you're seeing, Persona on there. That's why. I could see having this perspective on Starfield, to be honest. I'm enjoying it, but I actually can understand this. Tipu Master, I was very hyped for Starfield. I tried to like it, but it's clunky. I've heard it's the least buggy Bethesda game ever. I guess it depends on how you define bug. It's just so clunky and feels old. I actually think this is a viable opinion on Starfield. Like, the thing I tell people that haven't played Starfield yet, that ask me about it, I say, do you like Bethesda games? Because that is the most important question. Do you like Fallout 4 and do you like Skyrim? If you like those games, I think you will more than likely like Starfield, because the truth is, even though it's a new setting, even though they do some new things, it plays so similarly to previous Bethesda games. In many ways, it feels like Fallout 4 in space. Now, that's a gross... I know that sounds like very, I don't know what the word I'm looking for here is, but it's not just Fallout 4 in space, but in many ways it has that same feel. So that's like what I tell people. When people ask me at work and stuff, they're like, hey, is Starfield good? Should I play this game? I'm like, do you like Fallout 4? Yes? If you like Fallout 4, you are probably going to like Starfield more likely than not, because it feels in many ways very similar, but in space. If you don't, if you're someone that hasn't previously clicked with Bethesda titles, like Skyrim just doesn't really do it for you, Fallout 4 doesn't really do it for you, then Starfield probably also won't, because it does feel so much like a Bethesda game. That's really the question. So while I don't think it feels old and clunky because I just like Bethesda games, I can totally see that as a valid outlook on the game. Great point here by Logical Error. Mobile industry depends way too much on Unity. If they backtrack, they might still survive. If they keep those changes, they'll not survive a year. Yeah, I mean, that's actually a great point. Unity is so heavily utilized on mobile. If they have mobile devs start abandoning their platform, oh, it's bad, guys. It's bad. All right, I'm wrapping this up in 5 minutes. We're going for the last 5 minutes. Carlos, finally, I was looking forward to this. So much stuff has happened. It's great to see you, Carlos. Sorry I was gone. Felipe, Benji, get those guitars and do some jams. Well, I play really heavy deathcore. So I don't know if people would want to hear me play deathcore on here. So I don't know. I mean, obviously I can play different styles too, but when I'm playing guitar, I'm mostly playing deathcore stuff. You know, like Lorna Shore, Slaughter to Prevail, that sort of stuff. Bill Poggi, what can you say about the Elder Scrolls 6 being an Xbox exclusive? Elder Scrolls is a third-party game. Well, it's not third-party anymore because they bought Bethesda, which means they own the IP. So that would be a first-party game now. I think you mean because it, like, in the past was a third-party game. Yeah, it's just a bummer. That's what happens when companies buy studios, you know. Then they buy the IP. Benji, do you think Sony should invest in their own Bethesda-like RPGs now that they absolutely won't have access to them in the future? I do think that they should have one of their studios maybe make some sort of big Western-style RPG if the studio wants to do that. Sony is way more than set on JRPGs. So in terms of like total RPGs, I mean, they have like the best support for JRPGs, like compared to Xbox. I mean, I know Switch gets a ton, but you know, they're like light years ahead of Xbox in regards to the Japanese support. However, Microsoft did buy so many of the Western RPG developers, right? They bought In Exile, they bought Obsidian, they bought Bethesda. I do think it's in Sony's best interest if they have a studio that wants to make a big RPG like that style, that Western RPG style we think of. I think it would be a good idea. I would greenlight that if I was Sony management, and I wouldn't force it. You always want to be careful about trying to force a studio to do something, because at the end of the day, this is also a creative industry. But like, let's say Naughty Dog or Santa Monica or someone came to me and they were like, hey, we want to try and make a big, you know, RPG, Bethesda-like or, you know, Obsidian-like RPG. I'd be like, yeah, you got my funding on that. Yes. As long as the pitch is good, yes, it would be a good thing for the portfolio. So just depends if someone wants to make it. But if so, yeah, I think it'd be a good idea. Totally agree. People vastly underappreciate Nintendo's importance and contribution to the gaming industry. They do not need to be bought. They work well on their own and innovate constantly. I don't want to see a single platform holder ever get acquired. I don't want Sony, PlayStation to ever be acquired by anyone. I don't want Xbox to be ever acquired by anyone, and I don't want Nintendo. So I completely agree. I think having these three individual players is nothing but good for our industry. So yes. Yes. All right, we're going to have to wrap it up. Let's go down and see if I missed anything. From channel members, I haven't gotten anything, or super chats or anything. I don't think so. Jeremy G, s'mores help mental health 100%. Yeah, mental health is such a weird thing. I've said it before. There's like actually nothing in my life going bad. I'm just caught in a really bad mental loop, you know? Anyone that's had really bad mental health struggles will tell you, like, that wording, a loop, they'll know what I'm talking about. It's like I'm caught in a loop, man. It's hard to get out of the loop. One way I heard it described to me before is that you guys may remember or be familiar with, like, those slot cars, right? Where you would, like, put a car on a track, and it's, like, slotted in, and it's stuck on that track, right? And they would go, and it'd go through the loops, and it would do all of that sort of stuff. And the car couldn't leave that track. It was like, you know, like little Matchbox, like Hot Wheels and stuff. And it's locked in on that track. And that's the way your mind can get sometimes about certain things. It's like it's caught on that track, and getting it off of that track is very difficult. And that's what I'm going through right now. Anthony M. Johnson, 2024 will be interesting for Game Pass growth because it has a bunch of first-party mid-tier games. There isn't a big Starfield level release until Fable, unless Avowed really surprises people. It's a pretty good point. Yeah, they've got, I think it's a really good lineup, but it's not like, yes, there's not a Starfield level event unless something surprises out of what's announced. Like, Avowed to me looks very, very, Okay, Avowed to me looks very, very good and fun to play. I don't love the art style, if I'm being honest with you, but it's still a big Obsidian RPG, so I'm excited for that. Hellblade 2, in theory, should be a good game because the first game's good, except I am actually a little worried about Hellblade because every time we've seen this game for the past couple years, it's just Senua, like, standing in rooms making faces, which the faces look great, but I am a little concerned how little gameplay we've seen of this game for how long it's been in development. I would say that is a little alarming, but I still have faith in Ninja Theory, and I liked the first game, so theoretically, Hellblade 2 should be a good game. Flight Sim's definitely going to be a good game. There's no reason to think it won't be. And I'm forgetting one. I think, oh yeah, Towerborn. But I'll be honest, I'm not so sure about Towerborn. But yeah, I mean, there's some cool releases. But yeah, I would agree there's not a Starfield level game until probably Fable, yeah. So it will be interesting, yeah, to watch the Game Pass growth. Jared, if people want to get into Starfield a little quicker and feel way better about the game, I suggest right away starting some faction quests. Those faction quests are some of the best ever by Bethesda. I agree. The best way to get into Starfield is focus on questing. Don't focus on exploration, like going to random worlds. Don't focus on like just wandering around. Like, if you want to get in the groove of Starfield, and it may never hit for you, but like if you want to really get in the groove of Starfield, you got to start doing questing and like the extended quest lines. Not so much like, oh, random J Brony wants, me to go get this item for them. Like, get into, yes, the faction quests, the Rangers or whatever they're called, the Vanguard, like start doing that sort of stuff and just really focus on questing and it'll start to click. Logical error. Hi-Fi Rush above Starfield. I think you mean in my personal tastes. That's like a very hard question. I think the highs of Hi-Fi Rush for me were way higher. And Hi-Fi Rush was more consistently amazing for me. Like, at every minute that I was playing Hi-Fi Rush, I was having joy. Like, Hi-Fi Rush to me was, I mean, literally an incredible game. And the last like 2 levels are like perfection. So like, I would say Hi-Fi Rush is a far more consistently, it's obviously a far smaller and far less scoped game than Starfield. So it's going to be, I'm not going to say making Hi-Fi Rush is easy, but making Hi-Fi Rush really, really good and polished on something that scale is going to be definitely easier. Now, keep in mind what I'm saying here, than something as massive as Starfield. So Hi-Fi Rush, beginning to end, great, thrilling, loved it, everything about it. Starfield, there's a lot I like. There is some issues too, particularly the loading screens, man. And it's not always at that same level of high that Hi-Fi Rush is. So yeah, it's such a tough question because I do still really like Starfield. But on my Game of the Year rankings, would I put Hi-Fi above it? Maybe. I don't know, man. I mean, I loved Hi-Fi Rush. I loved it. I don't do reviews. If I was a reviewer like that did scores, that game would have gotten a 10. Like I would have reviewed Hi-Fi as a 10. And I wouldn't have reviewed Starfield as a 10. So maybe that answers the question, right? Starfield for me would have probably gotten like a 8.75 if we're doing the like 0.25 scale. Maybe right around there. All right. Petriton 3, did you play Baldur's Gate, Benji? Wowza, I have not. I plan on playing it. I don't have a gaming PC, so I'll have to play it on PlayStation 5. And it came out at the same time as Starfield, and I was already playing Starfield because early access. So that's going to have to come at some point. Okay, I think I got to go, guys. I've been going for a long time. John Scott, Benji, with that Xbox leak, do you think Wolfenstein 3 won't be a thing? No, it won't be, which is unfortunate because I think both those Wolfenstein games are amazing. And I'm also a little credulous on how big Indiana Jones will be. I think there's a lot less attachment for that IP than people think. So we're talking about like future Xbox games a lot. If there's one I can point to that I think might, and I could be totally wrong, right? In 2 years when this game comes out, I might have to eat massive crow. But the game I think that may not perform the way that some people are expecting most in that Xbox lineup is Indiana Jones. Most recent movie did not do that well at the box office. I don't think that younger generations have almost any attachment to Indiana Jones. People in their 20s, there's always going to be exceptions. I don't feel like your average gamer in their 20s has much affection for Indiana Jones. So for Indiana Jones to do well, I think it can't rely on the IP, because I think the IP is just not what people thought it was. And it's got to be very good. Like, it's just got to be the game itself has to rule. People have to want to play it not for the IP experience alone, but for, like, the game. Like, it's got to be really freaking good, or else I think Indiana Jones might not be that big, to be honest. A few million players for sure, but I don't think it's going to be one of these like 30 million player types, things. It's got to be really, 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 really good. Okay, I got to go, guys. I pushed the stream. I always push the streams longer than I should because I have to work today, but I got to go. Thanks for all of the support as always. Thanks for all the channel members. I think every channel member got at least one question hit. If I did miss one of the channel members, if they got 0, I apologize. I try to make sure every channel member gets one, but I'm not seeing a channel member that got nothing. So I think all of them did. Thanks for the super chats. Thanks for people that re-upped their memberships. Thanks for all of the support, all of the kindness that you guys always show me and everything. And I will do my absolute best to still be here next week. It's rough. I will do what I can. And I you know what? Screw that. I commit to it. I will be here next week. All right? You got to put your foot down. I will be here next week. So I will see you guys next week. And as always, everyone, stay safe. Play some games, and I will catch you either here on Twitter/X sometime soon, or I will catch you on YouTube next week. Have a great one, guys. Bye. Bye, 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 bye.